This is Do It for a Living, your source for inside information on the future of automotive performance.
You know, it's just trying to stay innovative and up with today's market and being able to hold the power. And now people are back to, I want the best clutch possible, but I want it to drive like a stock clutch.
What's holding you back from starting or growing your business into what it can be? Well, if you're listening to this, it's not a lack of information. What you're about to hear is all you need to get motivated and start making waves. Do It for a Living podcast details the journey of today's true players in their own words. Find out how they broke out so you can too. The time is now. The time is always now.
Welcome back to another episode of Do It for a Living. I'm Todd Ersley with my shop assist, and today I've got with me Will Baty. And so he is kind of the face and the voice and the person, you know, that you'll see everywhere involved with Centerforce Clutches. And so it's a family-run business. It's been around for many years, and I'll allow him to go into full detail with that. And I came across these guys again through the Optimal Ultimate Streetcar Challenge. So they were one of the sponsors and continue to be one for the series. And so, you know, I see them out at events, and then we see them at SEMA every year, and they've got some really cool marketing deals that they do, not only with cars and with swag, but with candy. And so I'll let him go into detail about that as well. So Will, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great on this sunny day here in Prescott, Arizona.
That's fantastic. Thanks again for coming on with us. And, you know, as I mentioned earlier, we just want to kind of get, you know, your personal history and even, you know, maybe some of the family's history about the business. So, you know, where did you grow up? What did you do as a kid? And kind of take us through the steps up until working at Centerforce Clutches.
I grew up in Lakewood, California. And I've always been into cars. You know, even when I was a little kid, I always wanted to go fast. And my aunt used to always joke about me on my big wheel. I don't know if you guys remember those, but
I had one of those with the little, you could just drift them around with their plastic wheels.
That's exactly what I would do. So Lakewood, California. My dad's a hot rodder, so that's what we did, you know, back in the day, 1930 Model A and a few other things. So, you know, there's pictures of me at 7 years old, you know, working on the Model A, sanding the frame and helping them do whatever I could do, you know, as a kid. But that's where I got the bug. And then BMXing, I did a lot of that as a kid, and just grew up and did my thing out there. Typical California kid, surfing, riding bikes, and playing with cars. So that's how it all started for me.
Did you, you know, after high school, did you go to college?
I did. I went to, it was just a junior college. I went there for a couple of years. It was Cerritos College.
Okay.
Is where I went. And I was just taking general courses. I was actually working at a machine shop at the same time. Because that was my passion, running lathes and mills and that such. So that's what I did all through high school, back when you could still do, you know, have auto shop and a machine shop and drafting and all the other stuff. So I did all of that. So when I got out, I started an apprenticeship at a local machine shop. So we were building engines and valve jobs and grinding cranks and polishing cranks and all that other stuff. And at the same time, I was going to college, and just kind of got bored with college, quite honestly, because everyone's wanting to go fast, and it was right down the street where I was going to college from the original NOS. So all of us were going there for our, you know, weekend racing, and we'd go street racing at In-N-Out and, you know, over there by Camelot and any type of industrial area that we could find. You know, that's where we wanted to go and have fun.
Yeah, and so the classes you were taking just didn't really
it was
jive with what you were doing, you know?
No, I did it for my dad said, hey, I want you to go and get some college education. I said, okay. And I was fine with that, but it was, I just couldn't pay attention to it enough, because I was having too much fun, you know, playing with the cars. So we were going to Glamis and we had fast Jeeps we played with the 401s with those, and we were putting so much nitrous in those things, it wasn't even fun. We 500 shot of nitrous on a 401. It was, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah. And
The
so
things that, go ahead.
what time frame was that? Like what year?
In the 80s, late 80s.
Okay.
Mid to late 80s is where we were, doing all that. And we were racing people, on the street with a C5, a CJ5 Jeep with a 401 in it. And
Nice.
it was just pure stupidity at its best.
Yes. Looking back, probably not a good idea, but it was fun.
Yeah, if I caught my kids doing that now, but yeah, that's what I did.
So then, so college just wasn't your thing. So where did you go, after that? Was it straight into like car business stuff, or was it, more machine shop oriented?
Oh, I actually worked at the machine shop for a while, and, I've had some odd jobs here and there as I was a kid, wanted to try this, and, typical kid get bored with something real fast, and, like a pinball and just bouncing around. But did heating and air conditioning. I worked at El Pollo Loco, and the first job was actually a Chevron gas station back when you still had full serve.
Yeah, filling stations.
So did that, and then right after college, I started here actually at Centerforce because they were looking for a machinist. And, and I started doing that.
Did you have any ties with the business beforehand, or is it just something that you kind of stumbled upon being in the right place, right time?
With that Jeep, we were using Centerforce Clutches in it at the time. And my buddy's dad, knew Bill Hayes, the owner at the time. And he said, we got some couple of kids, my son and his son's friend, which was myself, be a good fit for your company. So that's how it all ended up happening. And from there I'm still here 30 years later. So.
Yeah. So take us through kind of the progression of working there. Like, what did you start doing? What was your initial job? And then kind of what steps did you take to kind of go up the ranks?
I initially started to be a machinist, and then they had one of the guys leave. So I ended up going into what we call the assembly area. So I was doing a lot of the painting and matching all the parts, putting the weights and everything on the pressure plates and doing that. And then they wanted someone for running the disc department. So I started working in the disc department, putting all the discs together. And then as we started getting bigger and bigger, then it's like, hey, we really need to use you more full time in the machining. So that's when I went over to the machining department. This is over a course of some years, but so I started running the machine department, and that's really where I excelled because I just knew it. And working with Bill Hayes, he really took that in, and really he was our mentor on clutches and how to do stuff. And some of his ideas you would think that were just way out there, but gosh, even today, that ball bearing design was something that we worked on and really came into play, and we're still using it today on how to, achieve clamp load and playing with the ratios and everything of clutches. And to get in that guy's mind was that was a big fog, because he was just talking a completely different language that you talk to an average person and you wouldn't get it, but inside of this group, we all understood exactly what he was saying, but some of his verbiage was just out there, as far as how he thought. But,
so can you explain a little bit the history of Centerforce Clutches? How did it get started, in the clutch industry? Was that something that it just always did, or was it filling a need?
No, it actually, Hayes Clutches is where it all started. And if you go back to the early drag racing days, that's where it was, and unfortunately we lost one of the greats of Tom the Mongoose McEwen. And Bill and him were good friends, and Tom did a lot of R&D with Bill and actually started winning races, and he that's where it all started, was back, in the 50s, running drag racing. And Bill was pretty successful. He was with that, but it was his side gig. He actually was a full-time fireman. So like most
Oh, wow.
firemen, 24 on, 24
Yeah.
off. So he got bored and that his mind just couldn't stop. And he was an engineer, and just a creative person. So he was messing around with clutches and, Tom says, "Hey, is there something we can do better with these clutches?" And Bill says, "Yeah, we can do this. We can do that." He says, "Let me see." And so it all started in the garage, a 2-car garage, and just snowballed after that. And he was doing really well with it and was getting ready to retire from the fire department.
Mm-hmm.
And basically it was, I'm going to say, Mr. Gasket had offered him a lot of money for the name Hayes, and they were doing electronic ignition and, obviously the Hayes clutches. And so Bill basically sold his name of Hayes to Mr. Gasket. There was actually a company in between, but it immediately went to Mr.
Okay.
Gasket. And to back up a little bit on that, Red Roberts of McLeod Clutches actually used to work for Bill.
Okay. Yeah.
And Bill gave Red a personal loan to start McLeod Clutches, believe it or not. Because Bill was just a nice guy and whatever. And even today, we're still very good friends with good old Red Roberts. He's such a neat guy, and just to take all that history. But that's how that happened. So Bill started Hayes, gave Red a small loan to start McLeod Clutches. Obviously, they're doing well as well. But then Bill, has sold the name Hayes, and we started a speed shop, which was called Midway Speed. And the name Midway Industries is our parent name, and Midway Speed started at Midway City, and it's right there by Huntington Beach. It's a very small little town right there on Beach and Bolsa in California. And Midway Speed started, and we were doing MI clutches and flywheels and that type of thing. And then at that time, the diaphragm clutch had come into play, and it had an inherent problem of sticking over center. And Bill's like, "Well, I think I can fix that." So that's where the centrifugal weights came into play. So he started putting the centrifugal weights on there, and that's how we started Centerforce in 1982. And then I started in 1985 is where I actually started here. Then I actually quit for 6 months and came back, but because I wanted to do other things. But
Yeah, so you started, it was pretty early on in the business,
Yeah.
as officially as a business. It sounds like he was working his side hustle for a while, and that's actually pretty interesting because the episode that we just did was with a guy, he's a business consultant and a multi-time entrepreneur, and he's all about the side hustle. So
Yeah.
it's pretty cool to hear, another story of, a successful business that came about, hey, I've got a little bit of free time, I've got this skill, let's put it to good use. And then just meeting the right people, kind of got that ball rolling for sure.
Yeah, and like I said, Bill was such a neat guy, but his mind just never shut off. So like I said, a lot of things he was doing, back then was we were still playing with Stinger electronic ignitions too. I don't remember any of that, but it was basically pulled the point system out of a distributor, and we put our electronics in it, and that took off. And we were actually working at that point in time with Austin Coyle, John Force's guy, trying to figure out how we could get the Stinger to fire a fuel car. And we actually got it to do it, but it would zap 2 batteries for 1 pass.
Okay.
So you imagine 2 batteries, and it took 2 batteries every pass. That's how much juice it required to fire that amount of fuel. But we got it to do it, but it just wasn't going to work.
Yeah.
Obviously, magnetos works a lot easier than that. So.
Man, yeah. So lots of history with, that business, and, hearing that it's been around since the early 80s is pretty amazing. You guys are centered in California.
Not anymore.
Oh, not anymore. Okay. So where,
Yeah.
What's the moving? So why did you move? And
what was the date? 94-ish, 93, 94. Bill decided he just wanted to retire altogether. So his sons, Mike Hayes, had worked there his whole entire life, and then his other son, Pat Wilson, he had worked elsewhere. but decided, okay, I'll come over and take over the business. And Pat and his wife, his wife Susan, which is my in-laws, that's where I met my wife, was through work. And I was working there before. I was working there long before I met her, but that's how we had met. But Bill wanted to retire and go to Oregon, and he'd had property up there, and that's what he wanted to do. He wanted to live a little out there. And so we were in California, but the business was growing pretty much out of control. And we ended up having 3 buildings in California, 1 in Garden Grove and 2 in Midway City, just to have everything. So the machining part where I was in Midway City, and then all of the production was, meaning that the disc and an assembly area was in Garden Grove, and that's where also our big warehouse was as well. So we were basically had, like I said, the 3 buildings, and Pat says, you know what, Pat's a pilot, so he'd fly all the time, and one of his trips was actually out to Prescott, Arizona, out here. And they said, and one of his guys said, you should move out here. He says, there's a lot of incentives, to move out here, and cost of living, obviously.
Yeah, it's a lot lower.
A lot lower. And Pat, took him a couple trips, and he started looking into it, and then started talking to the city, and everything was looking good. And he ended up purchasing some property out here, and we ended up building in '94, started building in '94. And at the time we had 22 or 23 employees working for us, and 21 moved.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
With the business up here, it just allowed us to, especially for my wife and I, we'd already gotten married at that point in time when we moved, and had a youngster. But we were able to purchase a brand new house when we moved out here, which was awesome. I was paying at that time $850 a month to rent a house, and I bought a house, and
for probably less, huh?
For a lot less, and my house payment was $540 a month. So I was like, this is awesome.
That's not too bad, yeah.
And then, after we moved, and the whole company moved, and gosh, it seems like the business doubled within the first year after that, just because of the the amount of more money we were able to put into the business, and really expand it, with all the machines and everything. So it just continued to grow after that.
Yeah. So if you guys moved in the mid 90s, how did that affect your sales at all? Because I'm just thinking about it, you guys were right in the middle of California, easy to get to, speed shop. Like, that's typical,
It did. It helped in one area and hurt us in another. Obviously, all the counter sales, because a lot of people would come over.
Yeah, they just come in, right?
And they could buy clutches and resurface their flywheels. And what it ended up hurting more than anything was the electronic ignition side, Stinger, because we didn't have that over counter. Out here, we typically shipped everything, so it wasn't a big deal. We still had UPS, FedEx, and all the trucks, so they all came here.
And you were just, relying on magazine orders.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we were working with all the ad agencies at that time. Gary Bryson, and Doug Dwyer. They were doing all our ad agency stuff, and we were doing really well, and pumped more into advertising at that point in time to obviously get the word out about the Centerforce brand, and it just continued to grow and grow and grow.
And then were you guys selling primarily direct to consumers, or did you have kind of a dealer network?
No, we used a dealer network, and always did. We did a lot through, various companies, and we still do. So that's obviously, we don't typically sell direct we will, but we try to actually use our distribution more than anything and try to support them as much as we can.
Yeah. So, kind of maybe involved with the move or the business growing or anything, just kind of want to ask a quick, tough question here. What's kind of maybe like the worst experience that, you have seen in your time there, maybe economic downturn, or, a botched product release, or, just really anything, what was something
we've had both of those.
Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously, in 2008, things were really bad, and it wasn't just for us; it was the entire industry and country. When kind of a recession there.
Yeah, we had Brett Vocal on here recently of Ride Tech, and he, went into quite a bit of detail about, he was not prepared for it, and it was
Nobody was.
Yeah, really nobody was, and he really had to change how his business was structured to stay alive and be successful again.
Yeah, and Brett's a great guy. He makes phenomenal product as well. But yeah, we definitely need to pull back, and when that all hit, and reevaluate how we're doing things, and became a little more frugal.
Mm-hmm.
With how we were doing stuff, and where we were spending money, and where the the things that we were doing. Some of the advertising. Do we really need to advertise here? I need to advertise there? Maybe not as much. And as it turned around, because when it hit hard. It's almost like you turn the light switch on, and where'd all the sales go?
Yeah.
So, that was probably our largest hurdle. And, today we're still, a lot of companies are still struggling with that, because trying to get back to where you were before, because at that time we had so much inventory that, we're just sitting on at that point in time. And needed to make some turns and turn that inventory so we can put some more money back into the bank, so to speak, or in our pockets, and it just didn't allow us to buy the machines that we needed to buy at that point in time, because we got scared. How long is this going to last? So we cut back on a lot of different areas and reevaluated, like I said, and decided not to buy certain machines at that time. And so we sat on it for a while. Now we're back up and running. But
have you had any products that you guys were really excited about? Maybe like a new vehicle offering that just didn't meet your projected sales goals?
Yes, it happens a lot, actually. You don't know what the industry is going to call for. Probably our biggest one was when we got back into the sport compact market. We used to be heavy in the sport compact market back in, 80s and 90s. And at that point we offered our DFX, which was a rigid paddle style disc. And at that point in time, Hondas weren't making the type of power they are now. And so it's like, well, it really doesn't need that much clutch. And it's just, people were complaining about the drivability of it, because it was more of an on-off switch.
Yeah. It was a racing clutch, not a street clutch.
Exactly, and that's what it was. And those were just, the characteristics of that style clutch. That's just the way it was, and people just didn't like it. So we kind of stopped making that, and it's like, well, okay, well, our dual friction, we can do that with our dual friction. But then these guys started making more power. It's like, well, okay, well, we can bring back the DFX if we want, but these guys complained about it. So it's like, okay, well, we don't want to do that. So as we were going through, it was probably 2-3 years that the sales on that actually just dropped down. And that's when ACT came in the board and they started doing it. And it's like, well, okay, well, we definitely need to get back in the market, because that market is now grown. That's when, the Fast and the Furious came into play, and that really, really helped that market. So then that became the norm as far as the drivability of that style clutch. Like, well, we can jump right back into that, but if we're going to, let's do something with the product and make it nice. And so one of the things that was a common problem with them is they were exploding clutches, or what we call the drive strap. It was really small for the amount of power that they were running in the slicks, so when they were dropping the clutch would explode, and it was due to the drive strap failure. So we redesigned everything, and it made a steel billet pressure plate, and went to a heavier drive strap, and did a lot of things for upshift and downshift. And by the time it was all said and done, we ended up pricing ourselves out of the market.
Oh, geez, yeah.
But it was a nice piece, but it's what it took. It wasn't like an iron, pressure ring, and it was, ball bearinged, and it was everything we wanted it to be. But it was, at that point in time, we just couldn't compete with, we'll say like $120 clutch unit versus a $250 clutch unit. It's like, well, where's the extra $100 come into play?
Yeah,
what makes yours so much better? And it's like, well, there's safety, things about it, but it didn't work.
That price point is a very interesting conversation. It was actually, I was out at at a SEMA event last week for the exhibitor summit for the upcoming SEMA show, and was talking with some of the manufacturers, and it's there's the trade-off between, premium price and what's, the theory is, like the higher priced product, the nicer it is. And so but there's a point of no return where it's like, well, your product is so expensive that, I can't justify the price. And so it's got to be coming in and out of the market has got to be tough when you're trying to do that. It's like we had a product, then we changed it, then we left, then we came back, and now it's expensive, but it's good. So it's like a game that you have to play.
And you have to try to convince, these guys this is why it's that much money, but it's a lot of people are like, you don't need that,
Yeah.
And it's a lot of what I call a keyboard engineer, on the internet, dictating who, well, this is what it should be, and this is the price point, and who's never actually driven a vehicle before, but yet he's paid attention to all the internet sites and the forums, and he's all of a sudden a professor at everything.
Yeah, it's amazing that a shop can tell a customer one thing from experience, and then somebody they don't even know posts up on a forum, and they're like, I believe that guy.
Yep.
I'm sure I've been guilty of it in the past. I'm not going to put myself beyond that, but it's like, you just hear it so much, and it's amazing when it's like somebody with professional experience is telling you something that they know and can demonstrate, and then somebody that you don't even know and probably doesn't, good chance that they don't know what they're talking about is the one that you believe. So yeah, it's strange how that happens for sure. Just kind of reflecting back on, picking products. That's another discussion that we have often is, how do you decide what to make for what, and so like with clutches, which car do you need to make one for? And SEMA's trying to do a pretty, they're doing a good job of giving you vehicle production data.
Sure.
But you just never know. And it can change depending on if somebody else jumps in the market, like you said, ACT got into it, and, they may have seen an opportunity because you guys had gotten out of it, and they just jumped on it.
Well, that's exactly what happened.
Yep.
And, they, kudos to them. They just jumped into it at the right time, and it was just great timing. And, and we had pulled out of it, not completely, but not at that same level.
Yep.
With that style clutch, and because nobody wanted it at that time, but then Fast and Furious comes out, and all of a sudden everybody wants that style clutch.
It's back again. Yeah.
It's like, what?
What happened? Yeah.
So.
Well, what about something right now that's got you fired up?
There's a few things. Obviously, you being in the ultimate streetcar stuff, our little 8 3/4 triple has been working really well. And for one of our friends, Ken Thwaites, that he was running through clutches, sometimes 2 per event, in his Camaro. And he actually, one of Brian Finch said, "Hey, why don't you call Will at Centerforce and, see if you got something better than what you're doing." He says, "You're just having way too many issues." And I don't know if it was Ken's driving style or whatever he was doing with it, but we ended up getting Ken a clutch, and that clutch is to this day still in that car. Now I didn't think he campaigned at all with it last year, but it went 2 years with that same clutch in there, so we were pretty happy about that.
Yeah, that's great. I think he's been posting up pictures that he may drive that one at least at other events later this year. So that's pretty cool to hear. You get somebody that's hard on equipment to test your products for you.
So that's how where we do our testing is actually, and you're going to laugh at this, is in the off-road arena.
Okay.
And that 8 3/4 that's where we tested, because we partnered up with Weddell Industries, and they do a lot with the off-road industry and making gearboxes and clutches. So, we got our stuff in Robbie Gordon's stuff, and, and if he can't break it, then we're doing really good.
Yeah.
And because that guy, he can break just about anything. And it's just a talented driver, and he drives everything on the ragged edge. So that's actually where we do our testing for a lot of our product, is in the off-road industry, because it's just a brutal environment for a clutch. So we use that concept for them and took it and put it into the street market and race market for what you guys are doing. And that's worked really well. And that's when last year we developed the clutch for the Evo. our twin disc, and also the Focus as well.
Yes. Okay.
So
Yeah,
when you're talking about hot products,
Yeah.
those two are really hot for us because we're going to dive back into the sport compact market again, if you will, of that, if that's what you want to classify those as. But yeah, we're doing it right this time, and learned a lot of lessons throughout the years and how to do it, and trying to be more price competitive in a market with everyone else. But it's hard, building parts in the U.S. When you got guys buying stuff overseas, it's really hard to compete when you're building everything here in house. It's hard to compete with Chinese product.
Yep. Yeah. So, I mean, on that note, I'll go ahead and ask you a relatively obvious question, at least for the time being, is how are you guys being affected with the tariffs and the trade stuff that's kind of all going around? It was a 10% tariff on aluminum and like 15 or 25 on steel. So yeah, are you
yeah, we're feeling it.
Okay. Yeah. So what are you guys doing to kind of address that?
Well, we got to raise our prices.
Yeah.
As much as you don't want to, that's what you're going to have to do. But the thing is that we're not the only ones being hit. Everybody's being hit with it. So it's unfortunate for the consumer because they're the ones that end up paying for it. We've got a bunch of steel here that we have that we're able to kind of absorb some of that, and hopefully it's going to go up and then come back down. That's what we're all hoping. But whether it does or not, I don't know. So initially, we're just going to absorb the cost probably for the rest of the year and see what happens.
Okay.
And hopefully we can work our way through it.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, it's a very interesting conversation that I like having with manufacturers because it's jobs are great, very good. We love having more jobs, but when the economy is at full employment, it's kind of hard to find jobs. Now, they may be bringing people in from the underemployed or part-time employed. That would be great to get back into manufacturing jobs. Of course, that's fantastic. But if consumer price index goes up for everybody, will the additional jobs be able to offset that? We're going to find out. So it's
definitely going to find out.
Yeah, it's a kind of it's an interesting, but could be good, could be bad, experiment to see, what happens in a global economy when you start doing stuff on, your own again. And so I'm curious to know, see if we start importing material from other countries, that's definitely viable. I don't know.
You don't even know where, for us, we don't, we're buying steel semi-locally. It's usually out of California and Phoenix, but I don't know where they're getting it from.
They're getting it from. Yeah. And so who knows?
All we can get is the certification with each and every batch, to make sure it is what it's supposed to be. And that's all we require when we get it. How's the search? Does it meet our search? Well, yeah, it does. So carry on.
Yep. So it's good.
Next phase.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And I mean, you guys are pretty heavy. I'm assuming you use a lot of tonnage of both of those materials. So kind of curious to see, because I was actually at my metal store yesterday picking up some stuff, and I was spending extra time in the drop bin because they discount that heavily. So
yes,
I found everything I needed in the drop bin instead of having to buy stuff that's new. So kind of got lucky there. So yeah, it's very interesting to hear about that. So hope you guys, again, like you mentioned, it's affecting everybody. So it's not like just one person.
It is, and I'm hoping that we don't have to make any drastic changes right away, but
yeah,
we're just playing the game like everyone else. It's a wait and see.
Yeah, 10% increase on your raw material really, it really ripples through the whole assembly line and manufacturing process.
Well, make sure that the guys don't scrap any metal. That's for sure.
That's true.
Scrap any product.
Yeah. Don't scrap any product. Well, your scraps, your chips will be worth more. So you find a good recycler to come pick all that stuff up for you.
Oh, we do. He comes every week.
He's probably really happy.
Yeah. I can't imagine. We got 20 55-gallon barrels usually. That they come and pick up, and it's like, wow, all that. You get this big old chunk of round steel, and then next thing you know, it's just a little piece, and it's like all that wasted. At least, but like you said, at least we're getting a little money back on the scrap metal. But it's just a fraction.
It's just a fraction. Yep. Well, on that, we'll take a quick break and then we'll be right back.
We all know owning a shop is difficult, so we created My Shop Assist to help you manage the various jobs. Whether you run a machine shop, a performance tuning shop, build off-road trucks, or even do powder coating, My Shop Assist can help you. It is completely online and will help you schedule the jobs, log time on each task, track parts orders, and take pictures of the work. You can even export your jobs from My Shop Assist into QuickBooks as invoices. So if you're interested to improve operations at your shop, check out myshopassist.com to start your 30-day free trial.
Okay, so back with Will Baty of Centerforce Clutches, and we touched on you guys have moved out to Prescott, which is that's in Phoenix, right? That's like a suburb of Phoenix.
No, it's northwest of Phoenix. So
okay.
Phoenix is relative. Everyone thinks of Phoenix, hot. We're actually up in altitude, so we're 5,200 feet up here.
Oh, okay, so not sweltering, huh?
No, we see all 4 seasons out here, so we're 90 miles northwest of Phoenix.
Okay,
so
you
we're
guys
closer
are a
to
little
Flagstaff. Yeah.
Okay, I've driven through it, but I couldn't remember. I thought it was a lot closer than that, but it's been a little while since I've gone through that area.
We call it God's country out here.
It is really pretty.
Yeah, it's pine trees and everything, and it's a lot of fun.
So give us some details about the footprint, how big are the buildings that you guys own and how many people work there, and kind of if you can remember offhand or think of it offhand, kind of how that's split up between, manufacturing, sales, management, that kind of stuff.
Well, currently we're right at 30, and don't quote me, around 30 people here.
Mm-hmm.
The building is 48,000 feet, or 48,000 square feet. Third of it's mainly machine shop probably, and then you obviously have the assembly area and office space, and that's a 2-story deal in the very front there. So and all the owners still work here, and siblings, and so like I said, it's
in-laws like yourself.
In-laws are here, yeah. Yeah, they're here, and we touched a little bit earlier about employees and everything, and I just want to throw this out there real quick. There is an opening here for a CNC programmer machinist. So if you know anybody out there listening, feel free to contact us and see if we have an opening for you.
Yeah, I think just to interrupt a little bit, I think that's becoming, or may be already is, like a huge opportunity for anybody looking to get into the automotive industry. If you can take some CNC programming classes at a community college or part-time or something, I mean, that seems to be, besides mechanic, besides skilled mechanic, which is extremely difficult to get into, CNC operator, I mean, that job is just growing and growing and growing, and will for the future.
Yeah, for us, we're looking for more of a programmer instead of an operator, but someone who knows SolidWorks and knowing how to program at the same time, because it's for us, we're just doing more and more machining in house, and it's those machines just run all day long, and we're to the point that we're going to have to buy another machine just for some of my own personal projects.
Yeah, and even just your own stuff. Yeah, and even the thing is, even learning SolidWorks, you can buy a book and get the student version of SolidWorks for I mean, it's a couple $100. It's a good chunk of money, but it's not like an actual SolidWorks license is several $1,000s. But as a student, you can learn how to do it on your free time pretty easily. Like, there's not very much, as long as you have a computer, you're probably okay.
It took me a while to learn it. I took a college course out here after for IntelliCAD, and then switched to SolidWorks. So it's a neat program, I'll tell you.
Yeah, I did Wildfire Pro E, I think is what it was called.
Oh, really?
Same thing. It's essentially the same thing. That was what I did in college and then after college, and so it's I have since forgotten how to do it, but I always enjoyed manipulating objects in 3D with their little mouse pad thing that they had. But yeah, that's so you guys are looking for one of those, and you've got about 30 people, overall. And so, are you guys doing any direct to consumer sales, or is it maybe a little bit, but it's still mostly
a little bit here and there, especially because of where we are up here? We're in the Tules, local guys. And up here, there are so many hot rodders up here. I never knew there were so many hot rodders up here, but they come up here, hey, can we get a clutch for this build? And it's like, yeah, we can do something like that, but at the same time, we don't want to underbid our accounts. So we actually opened up a few local accounts and we try to feed it through them. But, most cases, if they're here in the local, somebody knows somebody, and it's always, okay, well, can I get a clutch? Can I get a clutch? And, sometimes we can do it. Sometimes we just put it through our accounts. So
are you selling through like Jegs and Summit?
Yep. Jeg, Summit, even we had Amazon for a while, and they still have our product, but they were not complying to the rules as far as pricing.
Yeah,
so
would you mind touching on that a little bit? What is your pricing policies, and how are you going about ensuring that people don't break the rules?
We have a program that goes out there and watches everything. Everything's computer nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
So, and other people let us know too, hey, so-and-so's under our MAP policy. And it's just a manufacturer's advertised pricing is what we asked for. And yeah, we try to monitor it the best we can, and we get daily feeds. If someone's under it, then we will politely ask them, hey, what's going on here? And usually they'll change it. But if there's a sale or something and we know about it, that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Someone's going to have a 5%, 10%, whatever the percent is, sell for this weekend, 4th of July sale. Well, then that's okay, as long as everyone else is able to do it. Great. But yeah, we monitor that pretty heavily, and we have our own staff that does just that.
This is kind of a deeper dive into that question. Are you guys having much trouble or seeing many people doing the MAP loophole of saying, hey, PM me for a price, or email me and I'll give you a good price, is that a problem in your industry? Because in the import world, that's pretty much. It
is a problem.
Yeah.
Yes. But what they sell it for privately, we can't control.
Okay.
As long as they're not advertising it, that's a different story. If they chose to sell it for $1, that's them. They lose money, not us at that point in time.
Yeah.
We sell it to our WDs at a WD price. We just ask them to make it fair for everybody so that everybody can still make money off the product.
Yeah.
Whether it be, and we're just going to use Jegs and Summit as an example. As long as those guys are playing fair, they're both making money on the product, obviously. Mm-hmm. So, when you undercut it, all you do is, you just take more out of, less out of your pocket. So.
Yep. Yeah. We call that the race to zero. Who's willing to take the smallest profit? And it's a lose-lose game for everybody involved.
It is. Because it lowers the perceived value as a manufacturer of our product. So it's like, oh, well, that's the cheap clutch. Well, no, it's not.
It's not supposed to be. Yeah.
Yeah. But so we want to make sure that, everyone is playing by the rules and fairly. So we try, best we can. It's a convoluted, complicated problem, but as you probably well know.
Yeah. So how has kind of the business structure changed over the years? I guess more specifically on like the products that you guys offer. So you mentioned, clutches is obviously what we've been discussing mostly, but you talked about a distributor system and some other products. Are you guys really honing in on the clutches, or is there still kind of some side projects that you guys do?
Yeah, we do side projects here and there, and not really talking about that, but we ended up stopping the electronic ignition.
Okay.
Just because it just wasn't our main focus. The clutches and flywheels really keep us pretty busy.
Yep.
And we weren't able to give that electronic the attention it needed. So we ended up just selling that whole thing out. And that's the way that went. And it kind of died. Most cars are all electronics now anyhow. So
yep. There's not too many of those left that are actively getting work
we'll
on.
leave that for MSD to worry about. They do a good job with it. We weren't going to compete at that level. So
Well, so here's this is like the softball question. How are you guys differentiating your product in this market of, clutch manufacturers?
Wow, that's a good question because there's a lot of clutch guys out there. Just trying to still stay true to having, for us, having our ball bearings patent, and we actually hold 9 different patents in the clutch world. I don't know if you knew that, but it's just trying to stay innovative and up with today's market and being able to hold the power. And now people are back to, I want the best clutch possible, but I want it to drive like a stock clutch. And that's actually hard to do with today's OE vehicles, especially with the hydraulic systems that they have nowadays. That's something that we have to fight, making sure that we don't put too much pedal effort, have proper release and proper wear for a clutch. So it's complicated, for such what you would say a simplistic device. It's actually very complicated inside of it. It's just supposed to push the clutch pedal and it releases and let it go and it goes. It sounds simple, but it's not that simple inside that bell housing.
Can you go into a little more detail about this, the ball bearing assembly that you're talking about? That's not really something that I'm familiar with, and I'm kind of curious about it.
Okay, so internally, and you're going to have to try to visualize this, that you have the diaphragm, and the diaphragm is where the throwout bearing is pushing down, and there's a pivot point, and it actually is resting on the pressure ring of the pressure plate itself. So that's where the disc actually contacts, and there's a point there. And what we did is we actually removed that point. And if you imagine the point on a ramp on both sides, so you have an elevated ramp up and a de-elevated ramp coming down, so up and down. The way to achieve clamp load is to move that pivot point in, and that fulcrum point. And on an iron pressure plate, it's obviously, as you move it in, you decrease the thickness of that pressure ring. So what that does is simulates wear. So most guys don't go more than 20 thousandths to move it in to try to change that fulcrum point to achieve clamp load, and you're just changing that that fulcrum point, and we can get more clamp load that way. Okay. So what we did is we take that off and we actually drill it for a true ball bearing. And at that point in time, we can move that fulcrum wherever we want. So if we want to move it in, let's say 200 thousandths over factory, but we can still maintain the OE thickness. And so when a clutch goes in, it's right at specified OE dimensions. So now everything works the way it's supposed to, and we still have the life of the clutch still there.
Okay.
So and it reduces internal friction, so we can soften the pedal effort without having to put a heavy diaphragm in it to gain clamp load.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for the explanation. Because I was kind of wondering, I wasn't sure if you were talking about the throwout bearing, and I was like, well, it's already a ball bearing. So in most cases,
we joke about we're the only clutch with balls. So
that's great. So moving on to kind of the business side, do you guys have a formal business plan every year?
Yeah, we sit down every year and as a group and how we're going to go forward, obviously through advertising, marketing, and then, our distributors who we're going to work with more heavily. Some are not meeting the numbers like they should. What do we need to do to help them? And so, every year, and we actually do that a few times, throughout the year, that we sit down and evaluate to see how the market's going. And sometimes the market just sucks.
Yeah, sometimes nothing you can do about it. Do you guys set, lofty, unattainable goals, or are you, like I can't remember like a reach goal, I think is what it's called, or are you doing like, hey, we want to grow 5%? Are you pretty conservative with your targets, or are you guys really pushing?
Because I just don't want to disappoint, and sometimes a lot of times you still don't reach that goal, and other times you blow it out of the water, and it's just trying to stay relative as far as what the product or what the consumer's looking for, and that's really what you need to do is pay attention to what that consumer's doing with that product or that his vehicle, and do we have the right product for his application?
Okay. And on applications, is there one product that just dominates all of them that you guys make, or is it pretty mixed? Because you mentioned, you guys are getting back into sport compact, or you may have had it for a while, but you're focusing on it again. And I just can't imagine the Evo and Focus market coming anywhere close to the Camaro Corvette market.
It's not. Yeah, it's still a huge market. BMW is a big market. But still Camaro and Mustang is still number one. Coming up for us right now is, I shouldn't say right now, but it's been the off-road Jeep market. Unbelievable. The amount of Jeep clutches that we do. We developed, this is a couple of years ago, and we worked with the guys over at Christian Hazel, the boys at JP Magazine, and Sean Holman. And, they were, when the Jeep JK came out with that 3.8 liter V6, when they went away from the straight six cylinder, they just lost all the torque. They didn't have that grunt torque anymore. And in the off-road industry, that's what you're relying on. And that's why the guys are dropping such crazy gears in it, running, 513 gears and whatever Atlas.
Oh, Jesus, yeah.
Drop gear set they can run in the thing, as far as the transfer case. But they need torque. And that when they went to, V6, it lost a lot of torque, at least down low.
Okay.
Where you want it.
Where you need it, yeah.
Right down in the, because, you're typically not running 6,000 RPM on a Jeep, crawling a hill, on a rock. So we noticed the flywheel assemblies and clutch assemblies, well, they're relatively light. They're still the same. So we went to old school thinking and said, okay, well, the way to fool this engine to thinking it's got larger displacement is to put a heavier flywheel in it.
Okay.
So that's what we did. So as soon as we did that, they started working phenomenal. And, to go as for myself, an off-roader, it just makes driving the Jeep a lot easier with a heavier flywheel. You're fooling that engine to thinking it's
working
a larger
harder.
displacement.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting. It's cool to hear you talking about the Jeep market, because we had I interviewed Dennis Overholser of Painless Performance a couple months ago, and he was like, yeah, like off-road is where it's at now. He's like, we still do all the muscle car stuff, but he's like,
he runs our product in his Jeep.
Okay, very cool. Yeah, so that's really cool to hear. That, and again, those people spend so much money on those trucks. I just call them trucks in general. So not really surprised that they're having to do stuff with the clutches as well. And it's, again, I'm assuming they're pretty tough on them. I've never off-roaded with a manual. It's always been an automatic, but I assume that's an extra skill in and of itself to do that.
Yeah.
But I just envision just riding the clutch endlessly.
You do. It's if you got the gear set, and here again the heavy flywheel, you can actually let the clutch out like in first gear, and you can still apply the brake, and everything just like you normally would. With our heavy flywheel, the engine will actually can drop down some more RPM. We can actually drop the engine down to about 300 RPM before it stalls.
Oh, wow.
Believe it or not. So you can sit there still, if you're trying to place the tires and trying to crawl a little bit, you can 2-foot it, having your, to kind of a as you would call trail braking.
Yep.
But it was, you're riding the brake and the throttle at the same time.
That's cool. That's very interesting. So that Jeep market is really going to start, or already is, and it's taken off.
Yeah, we make more flywheels for that than anything else.
Wow. So moving on over to the marketing side, this is something I touched on at the very beginning, something that I think that you guys do very well with.
Thank you.
Can you kind of explain the different avenues that you guys use for marketing, and then what you found to work best?
Obviously, we use print advertising in all your magazines. We do your online advertising.
So I'm guessing you're advertising in like the off-road truck magazines now too?
Oh, we always have been.
Okay.
We've always been known in the off-road industry and domestic and a little sport compact. But yeah, we work, every year there's a an assembly, kind of like most of your SEMA guys, and it's in the beginning of January, and then we call it the Media Trade Conference. It's another SEMA venue, so it's called MPMC, and it's I'm going to call it the speed dating. So every half hour, I'm meeting with some type of other source of media, whether it be TV, whether it be anybody, anybody that has TV program, magazine, online, any type of web stuff, YouTube, whoever it is, any type of media or advertising you can think of, they're coming there. So we do that 3 days from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Every half hour, I'm meeting with someone different, but it's a one-on-one meeting, and that's how we start our year off and how we're going to travel throughout the rest of the year. And, different events, like the Optima, we use that, and those, you're part of it. So it's great people to work with, and for feedback as well. So and a lot of times I use Randy Johnson as my R&D guinea pig, so to speak. But, but most of, I don't think we really had too many failures. I had one failure with him. But most of the time that's how we do that, whether it be going to Moab or any type of these other races. Right now we go to, I don't know if you know Rob Bird and Trish Bird, the racing birds, but in California Speedway there at the in Fontana, 4 times a year we go out there and work with all the guys on that autocross event. Okay,
so you're doing still lots of print media. And I mentioned the van. I guess it's a van that you guys have.
Yes.
The Centerforce.
Our bread van.
Yeah. Can you kind of, I've seen that thing everywhere. Can you kind of explain what it is and what you guys use it for?
It's a neat deal. That is a 1960 Ford Langendorf bread van is how it started its life.
It's like a delivery van.
Yeah. It's sitting on a 2002 Dodge dually chassis, shortened. And the engine is a twin turbo Cummins engine running a G56 6-speed transmission, obviously our twin disc clutch in that.
Yep, that's good to know you got your clutch in there.
Well, we wanted to build a tow rig and a diesel that we could use for R&D and testing, but at the same time still use it as a marketing tool to travel around and tow our trailer and go to these different events. And as we built it, like every other build, it just snowballed and turned into something way more than it should have, other than just a tow rig. But it turned out to be such a neat deal. And, it's got, you talked about Brett Vocal at Ride Tech. We run all of his air ride suspension on the thing. So work, Optima batteries and everybody. So there's a lot of companies on that van, and I can't list them all off at the same time. But
and then what else are you guys doing, goodies or other marketing venues to kind of get the name out?
Have you ever seen the candy video?
I've seen the one where how they make it.
Yes. Yeah. Now where it shows me in the beginning on my little mini bike riding around in the shop here.
Yep.
We had to do that at lunchtime so that we didn't interrupt everybody working.
Manufacturing. Yeah.
But yeah, that was neat, and that actually grew substantially as far as how many people want that candy. It's actually really good. I don't know if you've ever had it.
I've eaten a whole bunch of those. I eat way more than I need to. I think every time I stop by the van or the booth at SEMA, I get one.
Get a handful of candy, you and everyone else.
Yeah.
We go through on that candy alone at SEMA, we go through about 25 boxes, and they're about 20 pounds a piece.
Jeez.
Each box.
And for the listeners out there, it's like it's a hard candy that's pretty small. It's like, I don't know what the diameter is, like half an inch
maybe, yeah.
But it says Centerforce Clutch on it, and it's the guy's color, and it kind of looks like a clutch, I guess, really is.
It says I love, and then in the center of it, it's a heart.
Okay, yeah.
Love Centerforce.
Yeah, and they're good. They're good candies to eat, but that's kind of, I haven't seen any like marketing thing like that ever.
We've been doing that since 1986.
Really? I figured it was like a new thing, honestly.
No, we've been doing it since 1986. Even at SEMA, we have people come by, hey, where's the candy?
Yeah.
We haven't even put it out yet. And hey, where's the candy? Like, oh, okay, here you go. But that's what a lot of people remember, the candy. And the flavor is actually pineapple orange is the
Pineapple
flavor.
orange. Okay, I'll have to think. I've never actually thought about what flavor it was when I eat it, so I'll put some thought into that this year at SEMA.
But we had that, and then our normal apparel stuff. And there's a couple ideas floating around right now about other stuff that we'll do for this year. So
cool. And then how many like trade shows and events do you do a year?
Ooh, depends on how I'm traveling. Or which ones we're doing. I do a big one every year where I go through Texas, and I spend about 2 weeks on the road just going through Texas and anywhere else I can go. And we have the Good Guys.
That series of events, huh?
Yeah, that series, and then you have the Optima series. You have like I said, the one in California where it's an NMCA now is what it's called, the race autocross deal. And in various car shows throughout the year. And then we have, the Summit shows that we go to, Keystone shows we go to, and those are up in some Canada and US. There's two and
so a couple a month, huh?
It seems to be about a couple a month. And then you have, there's a time where my wife's like, when are you coming home? Like I'm home, but I only am, for a while there, I think my largest stretch was I was gone for 7 weekends in a row.
Oh yeah.
And then I come home, and then I could be home for, a couple of weeks. And then, right now I've been home for almost a month, and she's like, don't you have to go anywhere?
Now she wants you to leave.
Like, well, I can. Yeah, I'm going to go Jeep, and I'll see you later. So
nice. Do you guys also do like, brand ambassadors, people that, you work with to put your products on their vehicles and kind of showcase them at various events?
We work with a lot of different companies, but I wouldn't say that there's any like that. Obviously we work with Brett, Vocal Ride Tech, and Ring Brothers, and Bowler, and there's a whole bunch of them.
Okay.
Right now we're working with Speed is the New Black. We've been putting our clutches in all their cars, and that's whose car we actually had in our booth last year at SEMA. I don't know if you
cool.
saw
Yep.
that 300 Chrysler.
Yep, I've seen. There's somebody else working with them. I've seen posted up on Facebook recently, but I actually can't put my finger on it who it was. But
Magnaflow should be there, and Brett. I know Brett works with them as well.
I think it may have been Brett. Yep. Well, very cool. So about your typical work week, you've been there for a few decades now.
Yeah.
What is your hourly or daily kind of schedule look like? Are you down to a reasonable time, but then have to do stuff on weekends, or are you still available all the time?
It never shuts off for
Yeah.
me. Our work hours here, and we're Mountain Standard Time, is 7 to 3:30 is what we run here.
Okay.
I usually get here about 6:30 in the morning, and sometimes I'm leaving around. Sometimes I get out of here at 3:30, but most of the time it's between 4 and 5 that I get out of here, go home and do my own thing. But then at that point in time, then all the social media stuff, and I'm usually, if I can, on Facebook or something of that nature, chiming in on a post here and there, or someone will tag me on this. Hey, take a look at this, or obviously your typical Facebook and Instagram stuff.
Yeah, and so I actually got introduced to you, friends of friends, but through the marketing agency that you guys are using.
Yes.
Can you kind of explain, what you do with them and what they do for you as a company?
Con Media, they handle all of our advertising, social media, and everything like that. Great group of guys, and Dan Con is the one that started that. But every year, I was just talking to Luke earlier, but they're who we sit down with, and they're with me at NPMC, and we go over, throughout the year, we work with them for our ad budget,
okay,
and where we want to spend our monies, and what type of programs and what events, and that's how I got introduced through Speed is the New Black, is through them.
Okay.
So the company, we work with them heavily, and then all of their partners,
Yep.
That they work with. Is how we all get together and try to develop the best marketing and sales strategy for the year. because they have all kinds of information, that's very informative for us as far as the different markets.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to get him on the podcast, I think, because you guys are one of many that I've been introduced to, and I think he got something with SEMA recently. I think he was.
Yeah, well, Dan's on the board of directors.
Yeah, yep.
The SEMA board of directors. So, yeah, he's all over the place, and he's such a great guy. He's just a down to earth type of guy. I mean, He's just a normal guy, just like all of us.
Yep. I'll see if I can steal a little bit of his time, and he can give us some of his marketing secrets.
I'm sure he'd be happy to help.
Do you pay them by? Is it a percentage of your marketing spend, or is it
we
like
just have a flat fee,
just
with
a fixed
them
price deal?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I was kind of curious on how that went about. They got to get paid, and you're using their expertise. So how do they do it? So. Yeah, I guess if they do great, it's like, okay, that's good. So they've got a great reputation and long track record.
Yeah, and they've got what we call a long reach, so they get in areas that we just can't, and as far as information and contacts, and that's very helpful and beneficial to us.
Mm-hmm.
Not so much on the manufacturing side, but obviously all on the advertising side. And I've met some cool people through them, Adam Carolla and Matt Deandra. So we're doing some custom stuff with them too.
Very cool,
Matt. So
what is the kind of thinking about the future here? Where do you see the business and yourself kind of in 1 year, kind of the shorter term plan for Centerforce?
Well, hopefully still going like we're going now. I think next year you're gonna see more advertising from us, and I'm gonna try to get out there to more events, quite honestly, because I like getting out there and bringing the information back and what we're gonna need to do to develop product. But we've been doing a lot more installs in house. We just finished another one yesterday, and that's the only way for us really to develop and design product is to actually have the vehicle here.
Are you guys buying vehicles, or are you sourcing ones from customers?
We just source.
Okay.
And a lot of people have no problem. Hey, yeah, you can get free clutch install.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm all over it. So we do that, and we have our own vehicles. There's a lot of guys here that they're all enthusiasts.
Yeah.
So they all have their own personal projects, and we have our own, range of vehicles that we have here. Our test mule is a 2010 Camaro that we work with Langenfelter with, and it's an 865 horse Camaro that we do a lot of testing with, and you'll probably see a lot of video of me driving that thing and getting stupid. And
very cool. Are you, like, when a new vehicle comes out, this is a slight tangent, but when a new vehicle comes out, do you have to get one to take measurements, or do you go to the manufacturers, or is SEMA helping out with any like CAD data on that kind of stuff?
SEMA has a lot of great information, and yes, we do. We source from everything you just said.
Okay.
And because whatever SEMA's got from the OE doesn't always necessarily mean that's production. Because we've ran into that a few times where, okay, this is the clutch that we need to run for this. Well, come production pieces are different, and we've run into that, and that's actually bit us a few times where, okay, well, we work with GM and Dodge and Ford, all those guys, so they'll send us a sample piece of a production vehicle, but that was pre-production, not necessarily what ended up
Didn't
going
make it on
in
the assembly line.
Yeah, so a lot of times we can get away with it and budget, make a couple changes, but sometimes we've made product and we made all this product, and here's the OE piece, send one out, and it's like, hey, this didn't fit. Well, what do you mean? It didn't fit.
Oh, okay. Whoops.
Well, yeah, so then that's when we say, okay, now let's get a car in house, and
Okay.
that's why I say we need to have the vehicles in house nowadays. And we work with Jordan Priestley at JDP. I'm sure you know
in
him.
Utah. Yep.
Yep. And he's a great source of information too. So that really helps us out on the GM side of the fence, especially Corvette stuff.
So what about looking a little farther into the future? What's the 5-year plan for the business? You going to get into any different markets or get out of stuff, or?
No,
you guys
we
thinking?
are. We're going to dive into the automatic market probably and do a little bit of stuff there. And I'm hoping that the owners retire by then and we can just kind of take over.
Yeah.
But yeah. I mean, you always have to keep your eyes open to new potentials for new product. And the clutch industry, even though it's a dying industry, it's still a huge industry. But yeah, we are going to spread our wings a little bit and dive into other things. So
I've got 2 more questions. This is kind of something new that we hadn't spoken of previously, but I heard it on another podcast, and I think it'd be a good addition to ours. So, what is there's the first question, then there's going to be a polar opposite second question. So, like, what is the thing that you dislike most about, what you have to do? Is it emails? Is it the internet know-it-alls? Like, what is something that you wish you just didn't have to do in the business, in general?
personally, I wish I didn't have to do paperwork.
Yeah.
It's just telling someone. It sucks when somebody screwed a part up and you know it, and you have to tell them you can't, we're not going to warranty that because this is obviously and blatantly been put together wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And it's usually on our multi-disc parts where we actually number stamp and paint, put a paint mark on it as far as alignment. And it's done for a reason, balance and that it works properly. The floater goes, you have 1 of 3 spots for the floater to go. And usually someone moves it over one and screws it up and bends it, and you can see it. And that's usually probably the hardest thing is you feel for the end user, but when their mechanic screwed the parts up and now he's pissed off because his part's not working properly.
You're not going to warranty it.
And the installer's been an ASC certified mechanic, nothing against those guys, but that's just a common thing that we hear. And I've been doing this for 20 years and I know I've been putting clutches in when your mommy was wiping your butt. So it's like, yeah, but you can fully, we can read clutches like a book.
Yeah.
When someone sends something in and they tell us they were just going to church, well, no, you were not going to church. If you were going to church, you were taking the best, you were laying it all down there, but yeah. I don't know. I know that's probably not what you were looking for as far as an answer.
That's a good one. Like just having to deal with customer service side, when it's blatantly not your fault. That's very difficult.
And we really appreciate when someone's just honest with us.
Yeah.
More than making up some story and then, just starts off with M and F and this, this and that, and it's like, come to find out, well, no, you screwed that part up.
You screwed it up yourself.
And I'll give you one little story of a guy that called and just tore us a new one. And it was on one of our dyad clutches that he put in his Mustang. Okay. And he's going to go drag racing. And first time to the track and the burnout box, they annihilated the clutch. And he says, hey, he calls us up, that POS doesn't work, blah, blah, blah. And we're like, well, there's no way. We got it back. Sent it to us and we checked it for clamp load and he definitely cooked it. And we're saying, man, I don't, everything with this thing checks out. It just looks like you burned it down. You slipped it intentionally. He says, I didn't. He said, that's not what happened. He says, I swear. He said, why don't you take your product and shove it wherever you want? Yeah. And we're like, look, we're willing to work with you. Here we can get you another clutch. This is a one-time thing, but we want the measurements, what bearing were you running, and we got all that, and everything was as it should be, and we just couldn't figure out why this thing didn't hold the power, because he wasn't making a bunch of power.
Yep. Okay.
And then he calls back. He got the clutch, and he says, hey, I got to call and apologize to you guys. And we're like, why? What happened? He says, you're not going to believe this. Oh, no. I said, well, we believe just about anything. He says, when my guys were hooking up my brand new launch control, my line lock, they switched the lines and put the line lock on the rear brakes.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
when he went to do a burnout,
It's
he had the
huge
line
load
lock.
on the rear. Yeah.
Instead of having the line lock on the fronts so it doesn't roll, they had switched and put the line lock on the rear. So they locked up the rear brakes when he was trying to do a
He
burnout.
was probably just slipping. It was only slipping the clutch.
That's
Like the
what
wheels weren't moving.
He got the clutch hot enough that he was sitting there driving through it.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what he did.
Ooh.
He annihilated it.
Whoops.
But he was honest. He was
Yeah.
honest with us, and we appreciate it. But at least he called back and said, "Hey, this is what happened," and we
Yeah.
really appreciate that. And so we can work easier with someone who's just honest and, hey, you know what, I screwed up, I did this, I screwed up, I did that, instead of making up a story.
He didn't figure it out until they went to put it back in.
Yeah, that's once they figured it out, and it's like, okay.
Whoops. Oh,
Yeah.
Jesus. Well, to get to the opposite side, what is your favorite part about your job?
I actually probably have the funnest job here out of everyone.
Yeah.
Just getting out there and talking to people. I like to talk to people, so it's a lot of fun, especially when you get to, schmooze with some of the celebrity guys that we work with, and we've worked with quite a few of them, and especially when we can bring them up here to meet some of the guys on the floor, they're out there, those are the guys that make it happen. What I do is easy, but those guys are the ones making, on the floor here, making it, making the product and putting it out. So last year we had Cain Velasquez. I don't know if you're a UFC guy at all, but the heavyweight champ Cain Velasquez came up. He was in Phoenix, and he says, "Hey, can I come up?" I said, "That would be awesome." So he came up and walked around and shook hands with people, took photos, and that was really neat. And it just makes you feel good when you can have the guys on the floor that actually do all the work and make their day.
I bet they appreciate it. Yeah,
they did. And Tim Katz, and you might know him from Scrape, from Tap Out Clothing. He came up that one time, and we worked with Bill Goldberg and Josh Barnett and a few other guys. But it's kind of neat, when the guys say, "Oh, that guy," and if they can get something from a celebrity of some variety, and being able to give back to the guys, that really make it happen for all of us is probably the best part of the job.
Yeah, that's cool. Very cool. Well, one final question that I kind of like to ask everybody that's not really related to the business is, what is your daily driver? Like your grocery getter vehicle that's not an off-road truck or race car?
It's I actually just bought a Jeep, and that's what I've been driving.
That's it, huh? Do you get the new one?
I did. Well, not the JL. I got the JK. Mine's a 2017 JK. The JL just wasn't, the options that I was looking for wasn't out yet.
Okay.
And that's what I drive, and I have a few toys. I've got a 1930 Model A that I built with my dad that I told you about. When he passed it, obviously I got it. So that's out here. And my, funny story of that is I took it to my prom, and both my boys took it to their prom.
Oh, nice.
But that, and I've got a 68 GT 500 that I'm building with Josh Barnett. Okay. The UFC fighter, and got a little mini truck I'm playing with, an off-road truck, and then that's it, really.
Cool. Yeah. So you've got a multi-purpose daily driver vehicle.
Yeah. I just sold my truck. I had a Dodge Cummins truck that I drove, and everybody knew me in that one. And it was starting to give me some problems. So
just get out of it and get something new and fresh with a warranty, huh?
Yeah. So.
Very cool. Well, just to close out here, if people are, curious to find out more about the business and the products you guys make, where can they go to get information?
Centerforce.com is the best place, and we are right in the middle of switching websites.
Okay.
So be patient with us. Yeah, be patient with us. Probably within next week, we're hoping to have the new site live and ready to roll. And if we can put this podcast on there, that'd be awesome as well.
And then you can find out where to go to buy your products on the website, correct?
Yeah, you can. It's still there. It's just not functioning as it should.
It's going to be prettier here and more user-friendly soon, huh?
Yes, sir.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Well, again, I thank you very much for taking some time. I learned a lot about your company, and really cool to hear the stories of yourself and how you guys are growing and where you're going with it. So again, I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me on.
Thanks for listening to Do It for a Living. You can find out more about this guest, this show, and even details about what we just talked about at our website. Check out the Facebook page at facebook.com/doitforaliving and tell us who you want to hear from. And most importantly, subscribe to the podcast. Click subscribe. Do it now. Seriously. I'll wait while you grab your phone. Open up the podcast app. Tap the subscribe button. When you subscribe, you help us gain momentum and attract more high-level guests. Thanks for listening, and good luck.